by friend of the show, The Willie Mac Show. So the original tweet is this one by Hassan Piker. One phone call is all it would take to stop Israel's genocide. If Israel doesn't comply, shut off weapons transfers. If Israel looks to get weapons elsewhere, put up a sanctions package. And if that fails, invade Israel militarily. That is why all it takes is one phone call. And this was responded to in really the most generic Zionist way.
All it takes for Hassan to end the war in the Middle East is one phone call or a full-scale U.S. invasion. The escalation of this tweet is hilarious. Oh my God. That is where America's power comes from. That's it. That's not where it's going to go. Why are these people so stupid? I don't understand. So goddamn frustrating how stupid these people are. And we have propped up stupid people. Like, the online community has propped up people who are not knowledgeable on the history of the dynamic between Israel and the United States of America. And now they just fucking buy into it. It's just, I don't understand it. I literally don't understand it. Are you so incurious? I fucking laid it out right there. It's reductive. It's within the confines of Twitter word limitations, but
was bringing.
Here's Christian Amanpour also saying it. I guess they need to hear more like famous liberals say this shit because that's the only people that they respect. But I don't even think they respect those people. It's kind of like when I say it's a genocide, I hate Hassan, so I don't believe it. But if fucking other people say it, other people that I trust because they come from like reputable outlets, if they finally say it, then I'll believe it. But Hassan is still in the wrong, kind of like that.
Like, I'm making a video about this. Probably my next main channel video is going to be about this. It's going to be called something like How Zionists Argue or something like that. And it's going to talk about the main Zionist argumentative tactic, which is just repeating back what you said as if it's self-evidently wrong and then accusing you of anti-Semitism. Not always the second part, but usually. In this case, they were gracious enough not to accuse you of anti-Semitism. Very nice of them. They usually would. So the original response is this Twitter account saying, Hassan thinks you could solve the Israel problem with one phone call. There's no attempt to debunk this because, obviously most of Israel's armaments come from the US and they could not easily replace the American weapons manufacturers who give them these armaments. So if the US cut off their supply of arms, they would be unable to prosecute the war. You
need to understand why. I mean, I don't even think these guys know what they're doing in terms of trying to prop up pro-Israeli propaganda. When a Democrat or a liberal, like the liberal Vox reporter, also responded to this and said that it's childish and stupid. She knows better. She's doing that deliberately. These guys are just fucking stupid, and they think this is a good way to, I guess, counter whatever I'm saying or belittle whatever I'm saying without any additional information, right? Without any knowledge, without any fucking counter narrative, without any counter examples. Is just simply to be like, this guy is real stupid, huh? Right? That's it. And there are plenty of people who have also propped themselves up into believing that, into believing this ridiculous thing. So there is no value. If someone is so actively well poisoned, you don't ever have to address them. You could just be like, this guy's wrong. And unfortunately, there are certain sides of the internet where people get their notes from apolitical slop tubers where they just genuinely don't think about these things at all. They don't. They just go, oh, Hassan said it, so it must be wrong. It's a very stupid way to learn anything. And that's why you find yourself wrong in many circumstances. And you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't reflexively disbelieve someone in general. I'm saying this about Marjorie Taylor Greene or Tucker Carlson, people who even cynically put forward correct information from time to time. You shouldn't do that for anybody. Okay? This is not just for me. You should not do that for anyone. You should always try to investigate further what the claims are and then try to disprove said claims. Okay?
Be in real risk of being attacked by their neighbors and stuff because the US support, the US patronage is what allows them to do what they do. So a phone call saying, hey, stop what you're doing in Gaza, withdraw immediately, or the arms transfers are gone. That would end the genocide right away. It's not a question of could this happen? It's a question of why doesn't it happen? They don't even try to argue against it. They just restate the statement as if it's self-evidently wrong. And I really like the Willie Mack Show response here, because Willie Mack Show seems to have thought that Hassan was saying here that he could call Israel and end the genocide. I don't know.
All it takes for Hassan to end the war in the Middle East is one phone call or full scale. I don't even know if these guys are saying like, I'm going to make the phone call. I don't think anybody actually believes that, right? I hope people don't literally believe that. They can't be that stupid. I mean, that's stupidity beyond what I'm accustomed to online. I see a lot of stupids online, but this is like this is a new level of stupidity. I don't think he's saying that.
How to take this aside from him saying that. All it takes
They
for
are
Hassan,
saying that? No, that's what they think, Law. No, I think it's better for us not to assume that our interlocutors are just like that dumb, okay? I think they're dumb, but they're not that dumb, right? It's better to assume, it's better to try to be charitable. I don't think he's saying you would make the call. He's saying for, as in Hassan's view, which is only slightly less stupid. Yeah. Yeah, I think that this is him just saying, this is my view. Ethan literally did post that you think you can make that call personally. Really? Okay. Yeah, I guess I just had. What? What is this? Hassan, who would solve Israel and Palestine with one perfect phone call, and Noah, who thinks the Houthis are the only ones following international law. The fact that these airheads dominate lefty discourse on Palestine is a bigger gift to Netanyahu than anything else they could accuse me of doing. Why? These guys are political commentators, right? Like, just address the issue. Like, address the argument. Explain why America does not have this level of control over Israel, despite the fact that America has supplied 70% of all offensive and defensive weapons to Israel. Explain how Israel would make up for the lack of munitions that they are getting from the United States of America. Then explain how many Israeli military officials in the past, and even during this instance of genocide, has actively told the media in Israel that America has demanded that they scale back on certain instances in spite of what the Israeli public is demanding. And they've literally said, we can't do this without the United States of America. Explain why throughout Israeli history, American politicians, American presidents have actually made that one singular phone call to stop Israel's atrocities. Explain all of that. You know, there is no Israel without America. It's that simple. Why don't they address any of these points and instead just go instead they just like vaguely gesture into the fucking wild and go, this guy's such an airhead. He's so dumb. What is this? Does Ethan think Hassan is saying he's the one who would make the call? What the fuck is this dude saying? Me when I'm daydreaming about me when I'm daydreaming in the shower about being a hero, and then everyone stood up and clapped. I mean, he's implying that, but I think he's just, it's so stupid. It's irrelevant. It's not even worth addressing. Who cares? Like, this is the expectation I have from a slop tuber, certainly, but it's not the expectation I have from like a person who is, I guess, my ideological opponent here. You know? a person who is who is making this claim that I'm wrong should probably explain why I'm wrong. Right? There is no continued genocide without American weapons. Okay? It's that simple. And not only that, but also, if America cut off weapons to Israel, which would never even happen because it wouldn't get to that point, Israel does not have a meaningful way to make up for that supply chain. Okay? Especially in the short period of time necessary to continue this genocide. Who are they going to go to? Because when America shuts off weapons, you could say, oh, well, they're going to get it from Germany. Germany doesn't have the same industrial base that America has for a steady flow of weapons. They don't have the same arsenal. They do not have the same industrial base. And also, many of the weapons that Germany would probably send to Israel in the interim would not even be German weapons. They would be American weapons. So if America is shutting off weapons, then Germany cannot send weapons to Israel. That's number one. Number two, let's say they're getting it from Russia, right? Also wrong for a multitude of different reasons. One, because Russia is invested in pummeling Ukraine. They do not have that runway to make up for it. Okay, they have their hands too busy with Ukraine to begin with. But also on top of that, they have a strategic allegiance with Iran, as well as a strategic allegiance with Israel as well. But because of their strategic allegiance with Iran, they can't let go of their partnership with Iran either. Okay, Iran is still an important player in the region and an important player against American interests in the region. There is no place they can get it from, with the exception maybe of China, which I highly doubt China would, out of nowhere, start supplying Israel with a steady flow of munitions so they can continue doing their genocide, no matter how much they fucking love trade maxing. Okay? China is their number one supplier in general for their economy. It's profoundly important to the Israeli economy. They do a tremendous amount of trade with China. It's their number one. It is the number one country that they trade with. Israel trades with. Okay? China has a lot of influence here as well, which is why I've also routinely criticized China, just kind of gesturing against Israel and being like, Palestinians deserve to live, please stop, and then never really following through with any sort of coherent policy there. But there is no country that Israel could go to that could give them the same amount of and the same steady flow of weapons in the short period of time necessary if America shut off the weapons transfers. This is precisely the reason why it takes one phone call. But let's say Israel was, in this hypothetical scenario, capable of making up for the lack of munitions, and they were able to literally go and work Chinese weapon systems. Let's say China decided we're arming Israel, okay? That's the only country that has the bandwidth and has the industrial base to be able to supply weapons to Israel, right? America and Israel's allegiance has fallen apart. All of a sudden, America is anti-Israel. They said, no more weapons, right? Let's say China is actually sending the weapons. Let's say that while China is actually sending the weapons, Israel what? Magically figures out how to operate Chinese weapon systems? Like, you have to get trained on this stuff. You can't just like come in and be like, all right, perfect. Now these anti-aircraft defense systems that they shipped in, which is a logistical fucking nightmare to begin with, we can now use. You can't do that. It takes a tremendous amount of time and a tremendous amount of training for people to be able to start using this stuff, okay? You know this. You know this from what happened in Ukraine. It's not fucking plug and play. These are foreign adversaries. Israel is an ally. Israel uses American weapons. They do not use Chinese weapons. They use Chinese surveillance and things of that nature, Chinese drones, but they do not use Chinese weapons. They can't. It's an entirely different weapon system. America would never allow that anyway. America would nuke Israel before allowing Israel, who at that point would still retain a bunch of American weapons, a bunch of American like missile systems, to then all of a sudden bring in Chinese weapon systems onto that same platform. That would be insane. That would destroy any kind of security America had, because now Israel would give everything to China. Okay, there are a million different reasons as to why this would never work. But let's say it did work. Okay, let's say it did work. Let's say magically all of these impossible things took place, and Israel was able to perfectly take all the Chinese weapons and change their platforms to the Chinese platform, and were able to fucking train themselves overnight and started using that to continue as genocide. At that point, America would just destroy Israel's economy. That's it. America would say, no more trade with Israel. If you trade with Israel, with the exception of China, let's say, because it's too much of a powerful player in the global marketplace, they would just fucking pull a Cuba on Israel. They would do a full-blown embargo. They would stop other countries from trading with Israel. It would, again, never get to that point. Regardless, I can't stress this enough, because that is the reason why all it takes is one phone call. And let's say Israel says, fuck it, we're doing full genocide. We don't care. You can kill our economy. Okay? You can kill our economy. We still want to do genocide. At that point, they would invade. Okay? That's it. It never gets to that point, and it never has to get to that point, because it starts and ends with one phone call for this reason. It would never in a million years get to the point where America's invading Israel militarily. Okay? That is why all it takes is one phone call. Even from the first step to the second one, there is a tremendous amount of impossible things that are literally physically not possible for Israel to do to be able to continue its fucking genocide. Okay? Once again, 70% of all weapons that Israel is using, both offensively and defensively, are supplied since October 7 by the United States of America. Can you go and yell about something else? You yell about the Israel's genocide fetish. Can we go and yell and bitch about something else? You bang this Israel's genocide fetish drum every time I watch you, and I'd like to hear what you have to say about other things that are going on as well. I mean, I was covering other things before we got here.
To end the war in the Middle East is one phone call. He genuinely seems to think that Hassan was talking about himself rather than the President of the United States of America. God, I love Willie Mack Show. He's so funny. But look, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt here. I'm going to assume this is just some bad wording on his part, and what he meant is that he thinks it's ridiculous to think that the US president could ever end a conflict in the Middle East or a war in the Middle East with one phone call. And I'm going to look into whether or not there's any precedent for this happening or not. Okay? So, in 1982, during the Israeli assault on Lebanon, there was a phone
Ronald Reagan made a phone call, said, "You are doing the Holocaust. Stop."
Call between President Ronald Reagan and Prime Minister of Israel, the noted terrorist Menachem Begin, whose name I surely mispronounced, but I mean, modern Hebrew is a constructed language anyway. They pronounce everything wrong, so I'm going to also pronounce things wrong. He called him and he said he told him, stop the bombing. What you're doing here is not okay. We don't support this. Stop. And within 20 minutes, the bombing stopped. Okay, so that's one precedent for this happening. Ronald Reagan, by the way, Ronald Reagan was an extremely Trumpish president. He was just better on camera than Trump is, because he was an actor and Trump isn't. Ronald Reagan was absurdly stupid, absurdly dumb, and even
Wrong. Donald Trump is a TV guy as well, and that's the reason why he's very telegenic and very charismatic. I disagree with Bad Empanada.
even he did this. So clearly the US president does have this power. They have massive coercive power over Israel because Israel relies on their arms to be able to prosecute its war. It relies on their diplomatic support and in many ways their indirect or direct military support. Like the US, for example, famously helps shoot down missiles that are launched at Israel. It famously patrols the waters near Israel just to keep, make sure its presence is known, because Israel wouldn't be able to do that as effectively by itself. You also see like the US attacking Yemen essentially on behalf of Israel a number of times, and the US attacking Iran on behalf of Israel. So the US does a fucking ton for Israel, and Israel knows this, obviously. The Israeli leaders know this. And if this stuff was taken away from them, or if there was a credible threat that it could be taken away from them, Israel would have to fall in line. So the question here is not, would that work? As Hassan Piker said, it does work. It's proven to have worked in the past. And even like a basic thought experiment using the most basic Occam's razor would have you conclude that yes, Israel would indeed have to stop the genocide in Gaza if the US president called Netanyahu and told him in firm terms with a clear threat to escalate if he doesn't, that this needs to stop. The US is the world's premier empire. Israel is one of its proxy states. This is obvious. It's just so evident. It's so clear why they have not attempted to actually refute what's being said here. Because as I said, the Zionist argumentation is to repeat what you are saying as if it's self-evidently wrong and then call you anti-Semitic for saying it. So rather than attempt to refute what Hassan was saying here on the merits of his statement, on the merits of the evidence for it, they just say, all it would take is one phone call.
Yeah. And there's one other thing that can actually kind of jam up this machine of death and destruction, and that is mounted opposition, mounted military opposition that is too consequential for Israel and even the United States of America. We saw this with the 12-day war with Iran. Okay? Iran was able to successfully cripple the Israeli economy and shut Israeli society down for 12 straight days. And in the process, they actually expended American munitions. THAAD missiles are not cheap. They take years to build. We do not have enough stockpiles. Israel does not have enough stockpiles, certainly, but Israel does not even have enough stockpiles with America backing Israel. So there was a point as well. There is a point where this can come to a halt without America making that phone call, or force America to make that phone call. In the Western world, our only way of pushing for this phone call is by constantly protesting, constantly creating an environment where we punish politicians for maintaining their allegiance with Israel. And then it's same in the Western nation states as well, where you can actually get more involvement from your politicians, even though they're fearful of America's interests, fearful of ever sidestepping the United States of America. You can actually create more pressure on the global stage by getting European countries to criticize Israel, to create an even more expansive permission structure to say fuck Israel, right? And then all of that ultimately becomes costly for the United States of America. In the region, though, the way to do this is by expending America and Israel's munitions. It's that simple. That's it. I mean, this is what happened after the 12-day war. Had Iran fired a few more large volleys of missiles, Israel could have exhausted its supply of top-tier Arrow 3 munitions, one of the U.S. officials said. Okay? THAAD operators burned through munitions at a furious clip, firing more than 150 missiles to shoot down the waves of Iranian ballistic missiles, according to U.S. officials. That is nearly a quarter of the interceptors ever purchased by the Pentagon. This is according to the Wall Street Journal. It wasn't just the THAAD. The U.S. ran through large numbers of shipborne interceptors as well, and Israel quickly drained stockpiles for its own systems. Dozens of Iranian missiles got through anyway. It would likely take more than a year and cost between $1.5 billion to $2 billion, debatable, to replenish the THAAD interceptors fired during the 12-day war, according to Wes Rumbaugh, a CSIS fellow who researches Pentagon missile procurement and budget details. Most of America's Arleigh Burke class-guided missile destroyers are armed with SM-2s, SM-3s, and SM-6s. Those warships also went through interceptors at an alarming rate. During the 12-day war, the ship shot about 80 SM-3s at Iranian threats, according to a U.S. official. So everyone who predicted that Israel's multi-layered missile defense was 1 to 2 weeks away from critical grid attrition was correct. It could have been sooner, depending on the tempo of attacks. That stage would force Israel to triage its finite supply of interceptors, saving the rest only for sensitive military sites, while they let the rest through to strike their targets. This is obviously a situation Israel would want to avoid. Do you understand? It's a multifaceted, multi-layered approach. At the end of the day, war can be as complicated or as simple as you want to explain it. And I think the simplest ways to describe war is attrition, both in the economy, but in the simplest terms, attrition with how much it costs for an Iranian missile to be lobbed in the direction of Israel versus how much it costs for Americans to defend Israel. Okay? It is unimaginably costly to defend Israel like this. It is, in comparison to how costly it is to defend Israel like this, it is insanely cheap to attack Israel if you are Iran. It's not even a comparison. It's the same with Yemen. Operation Prosperity Guardian under the Biden administration was a multi-billion-dollar operation, and it failed. They wanted to stop the Houthis from implementing a blockade and making it so that regular commercial shipping that goes to Israel could continue, that they wanted to stop the Houthis implementing a blockade against Israel. Okay? They wanted to do that. They wanted to stop it. It failed. Donald Trump continued it, restarted it, and continued it. It was even more costly when Donald Trump did it. And they still were completely incapable of stopping the Houthis from implementing a blockade. So they had to come to the bargaining table and implement a negotiation where they basically said, Houthis, stop attacking our ships, our Navy ships, American Navy ships, and you can continue bombing Israel if you want. That was literally the deal that Donald Trump put together. He even said the Houthis are very brave warriors. They're very brave people. They fight so good. And in the process, one of Israel's two major ports has gone bankrupt. The Houthis did that. Okay? The Houthis dropped during the second wing of Operation Prosperity Guardian approximately 20 plus Reaper drones that are around $20-30 million a pop. Four fighter jets dropped in the process due to maneuvering incidents, due to hitting one another. And they were able to strike the Ben Gurion airport. Is not even a question. It is not costly for them to do this. It is incredibly costly for America to continue doing this.
Hello, stupid. And I mean, yeah, in 2021 as well, the Biden administration pushed Israel very firmly towards a ceasefire, though not quite as firmly as Reagan did. So this is something for which there is precedent, and it's something for which, even if there wasn't precedent of it happening in the past, you can just look at the relationship between the US and Israel, see how much the US gives to Israel, how much Israel is reliant on the US, and easily conclude that yes, the US president could absolutely force them to stop what they're doing in Gaza. The question is not, can he? The question is, why doesn't he? But again,
thank you. Exactly. And no amount of explaining this is going to help these people understand this reality because they don't see this video. They don't come here. There is a steady flow of fuck Hassan propaganda that just like circulates in that corner of the internet. And especially if you're already like invested in the mindset that like America can do no wrong, or America can sometimes do wrong, but they're doing wrong while they're trying to do right. You know, if you have this kind of attitude, you never actually learn the truth. This is what's so frustrating about the nature of discourse online nowadays. I guess it's always been this way, but it's gotten especially worse in recent years, where no amount of explainers is going to cause someone who is already invested in the Hassan is stupid and dangerous and violent and a terrorist to basically turn around and go, wait a minute, let me look into this myself. You understand? We fought for over a year and the administration never said ceasefire now. This is from Drop Site News all the way back in April 28. Israeli officials were blunt about the benefits of Biden's passivity. Former Ambassador Michael Herzog declared, God did the state of Israel a favor that Biden was president during this period because it could have been much worse. We fought in Gaza for over a year and the administration never came to us and said, ceasefire now. It never did. And that's not the problem. That's not to be taken for granted. It's ironic because people will always say like, oh, he's looking at Twitter links. Like that's another one. That's another like fucking thought terminating cliche. I'm not looking at Twitter links. I'm looking at Twitter summarizations of an article from a reputable outlet like Drop Site News that is comprised of investigative reporters that have worked all around mainstream news that are fucking very well credentialed, people who I know personally. Okay? People always love doing that where they're like, he's just looking at Twitter links. It's like, I'm not. This is a Drop Site News summarization of an article that was initially reported in Axios. Okay? Or this is Channel 13, sorry. Axios reported on it as well. You can dismiss those people out of hand. I know. But the problem is you shouldn't, because there are a lot of people like that.
Them. And then October 7th happened and that absolute catastrophe and slaughter inside Israel. And now for nearly 2 years now, the revenge has been bitter and deep. And where is it leading Israel? Where does it leave the hostages? And where does it leave the Palestinian people? So there's a huge amount that Israel's allies, and especially the United States of America, who could, with a single phone call, change this.
Yeah, there you go. Christian Amanpour, reputable, notable liberal, also saying that America could change this with one fucking phone call. Anyway, there's a Trump press conference happening right now after his executive order. Let's take a look.
Redistricting, or whatever you want to call it, the Democrats have done it long before we started. They've done it all over the place. They did it in New York. They did it in a lot of different states. But in Massachusetts, so somebody used this as an example today. I was interviewed this morning, and they said, you know, it's pretty unfair. Trump got 40%. I'm not proud of that, but I think I probably got more, but that's okay. I got 40% in Massachusetts, and yet they have 100% of the vote in terms of Congress. So there's no Republican, there's no anything. So we should have 40%. You know why? They redistricted, and they've done it all over the place, and they've done it in California, by the way.
You said that before, just one phone call. Is that an exaggeration or literally? Of course it's not literal, dude. Like, there's no policy change that happens with one singular phone call, okay? Don't be dense. Oh my God. It's the closest you can get, however, in terms of foreign policy to ending something with one singular, literally one singular phone call.
Medical provision for people. We've watched them destroy our country for 4 years, and people don't want that. And people in Texas, as you saw, I got the highest vote in the history of Texas. I love Texas. Texas likes me, obviously. But I got the highest vote, and that was checked out on the show. Did you see that? Where they checked it out, they said he actually did get the highest vote in the history of Texas, which disappointed them. They were very disappointed to hear that. But Texas is a place that's done very well with a free enterprise kind of an attitude, with the exact opposite of what's happening in New York with a communist mayor. And they know what they're doing, and they're doing the right thing. Yeah.
Two questions for you.
Mr. President, thank you. Texas Senator John Cornyn is asking for your help to force Democrats back to the state and hold them accountable. Do you want the federal government and the FBI to help locate and arrest these Texas Democrats who have left the state?
Well, I think they've abandoned the state. Nobody's seen anything like it, even though they've done it twice before. And in a certain way, it almost looks like they've abandoned the state. It looks very bad. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Should the FBI get involved? Should the FBI get involved?
Well, they may have to. They may have to. No, I know they want him back. Not only the Attorney General, the governor wants him back. If you look, I mean, the governor of Texas is demanding they come back. So a lot of people are demanding they come back. You can't just sit it out. You have to go back. You have to fight it out. That's what elections are all about. Yeah, please.
Thank you so much, President Trump. Two questions for you. One, were you aware of and did you personally approve the prison transfer for Ghislaine Maxwell that your Justice Department
I
did
didn't know
today?
about it at all. No, I read about it just like you did.
And do you believe that she is
It's not a
credible
very
voice?
uncommon thing.
Do you believe that she's credible to be listening to? Your Deputy Attorney General sat down with her recently.
Well, let me tell you, he's a very talented man. His name is Todd Blanche. He's a very legitimate person, very high, I just a very highly thought of person, respected by everybody. And I didn't talk to him about it, but I will tell you that whatever he asked would be totally appropriate, and it's not an uncommon thing to do that. And I think he probably wants to make sure that, people that should not be involved or aren't involved are not hurt by something that would be very, very unfortunate, very unfair to a lot of people. But I will say this, Todd Blanche is one of the most highly respected people you'll ever meet. So I know this. I didn't discuss it with him, but anything he talked about with her or the fact that he did that, not unusual, number one, and most importantly is something that would be totally above board. Please. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. President.
Sonia
Mr. President, how
Lang.
much more would you
Thank you for the
like
100
DOJ to cut
gifted.
from the federal government?
Well, it's not so much Doge
Why?
anymore. And by the way, I have to say that somebody from Doge was very badly hurt last night. You saw that. A young man who was beat up by a bunch of thugs in D.C. And either they're going to straighten their act out in the terms of government and in terms of protection, or we're going to have to federalize and run it the way it's supposed to be run. But it's not a question of Doge. We have great people,
Thugs.
secretaries and all, working with Doge and cutting with I said with a scalpel as opposed with an axe. This cutting with a fine-tooth comb.
This is a turning point in
and
domestic
they're getting
policy
rid
when
of
you're taking
people
a
that
pee
aren't
break?
doing
Yes.
their job, or bad people,
still
or
have to
bad
piss.
things, bad policy, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we've been very successful in that.
Casually
And there's
Explained
more
just
cutting
tweeted
to
about
do,
you.
but there's also more getting. We want smart people in government. Our country is doing great. I think we are doing probably, maybe in many ways, better than we've ever done before. We're taking in trillions, not billions, trillions and trillions of dollars from other countries who, for years, took advantage of us. They took advantage of the United States like we were children, and that's not happening anymore. Now they're paying a lot of money, and they're paying hundreds of billions of dollars. Individual countries paying hundreds of billions of dollars. You're seeing what everybody else is seeing. And we have a lot of things we can do. One of the questions asked of me this morning is, are you going to make a dividend to the people? And the purpose of what I'm doing is primarily to pay down debt, which will happen in very large quantity. But I think there's also a possibility that we're taking in so much money that we may very well make a dividend to the people of America. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Back to Mersheimer.
That Israel wanted us to fight against Iran in 2024, that they tried to bait us into attacking Iran in April and then in July. And as I said before, the Biden administration did not take the bait.
Can you think conversely of instances where the U.S. government chose the interests of a foreign power over and against its own interests and its people's interests?
Besides the Israeli case?
No. In the case of Israel, we're allied with Israel informally, and they want us to do something that is hurtful to us, does not help our interests at all, but we do it anyway.
What is our interest? What is our interest? What is, in air quotes, our interest? Okay. Was Iraq in our interest? Depends on who you ask. Was it okay for 12,000 Americans to die in this illegal invasion of a foreign nation? Even if you're not thinking about the millions, the tens of millions that are displaced, extremism in the region, a power vacuum that was created, the formation of ISIS. Even if you're purely looking at it from the perspective of the average American, was it in their interest? No, of course not. Was it in the grand interest of American capital to go into a foreign nation and piece up its natural resources, like oil, for example, and to forcibly sell it off to foreign capital? To continue a steady flow of munitions to an ever increasingly expansive military industrial complex, one of the only remaining domestic manufacturing hubs of it.
Something strange is happening to Tucker Carlson. And this is from his interview with political scientist and international relations scholar, John Mearsheimer.
And in fact, if you go back and read the literature on the creation of Israel, this is all thoroughly documented. Ethnic cleansing was a subject that the Zionists talked about from the get-go, and they talked about extensively, because there was no way they could create a greater Israel without doing massive ethnic cleansing. You want to remember that when the Zionists come to Israel, starting in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there are remarkably few Jews in Palestine. And those Jews are not Zionists. The Zionists are the Jews who come from Europe.
Right.
And they understand that they're moving into a territory that's filled with Palestinian villages and Palestinian people. And the question you have to ask yourself is, how can you create a Jewish state on a piece of territory that's filled with Palestinians without doing ethnic cleansing, massive ethnic cleansing? And the answer is you can't. So they're talking about and thinking about ethnic cleansing from the get-go. So the idea that they wouldn't think of what the situation looks like after October 7th is an opportunity to do ethnic cleansing, it belies.
So it wasn't really a land without people for a people without land.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Classic Carlson, isn't it? He says something, which he knows it wasn't a land for people that land. He knows that's not. So what you're telling me is this thing I already know. Anyway, it's a nice sort of.
I guess there's not more clips from this. Hold on. Let me find the actual one then. I thought that there would be a.
Professor, thank you.
This is a 2-hour interview. Obviously, I'm not gonna. What the fuck? You are not alone. Suicide and Crisis Hotline. The growing threat of China and how the U.S. empowered them. The U.S. public calls Zelensky. Donald Trump's biggest challenges with ending the war. Why the U.S. foreign policy establishment is so hawkish on Middle Eastern wars. Why the U.S. puts Israel's interest first. Here, we'll start here.
If need be, it can help Israel if it gets into trouble.
I didn't hear any reference to American interests in that description.
Well, when it comes to Israel, right, and what Israel needs, right, that has little to do with American interests, right? The truth is, any two countries in the world.
I don't understand how these guys, how Mearsheimer says stuff like this. I mean, I guess I kind of understand it because he is ultimately an international relations realpolitik guy. So in his mind, he does not have like a dialectical perspective. He does not have a materialist perspective. So therefore, like when he says, "Oh, this is not in the interest of America," I think his assessment is still his assessment is still structured around liberalism. His assessment is still structured around the limited confines of liberal capitalist framework. Because America has a profound interest in both propping up Israel from the start as a Cold War ally, and also utilizing its incredible espionage facilities all around the globe. And not only that, but also just using it as an unsinkable aircraft carrier and a military base, a forward operating base in a resource-rich region that also has the capacity to control an invaluable trade route, right? So for that purpose, for that very reason, it is absolutely in the quote-unquote interests of America. It's like saying war is not in the interest of empire, or war is not in the interest, like doing these foreign wars is not in the interest of going, is not in the interest of the American public. It's true.
Are going to have
but
similar interests plus different interests.
Yes.
Right. So there's no question.
I'll hear what he has to say.
Israel and the United States sometimes have similar interests,
yes,
and sometimes have different interests. Let me give you an example of this. The United States has a vested interest in making sure Iran does not have nuclear weapons.
Yes.
We're against proliferation. It's in the American national interest. It's obviously in Israel's national interest for Iran not to have nuclear weapons. Right. So two states can have similar interests. In the case of Israel and the United States,
we already have Egypt and Jordan. They don't commit genocide. Yes, this is where I misalign, I guess, with like a full-blown materialist perspective, because I don't think the people that are fucking operating here are thinking like that. But those guys are brown, okay? Israel is seen as a white country in the simplest terms. And Egypt and Jordan not committing genocide like Israel does not even matter a little bit, okay? Saudi Arabia does a fucking genocide in Yemen. We love that. We gave them weapons to do so. We helped them out. We helped them target some of these fucking school buses that they struck, okay? But ultimately, there's only so much trust you can put in the hands of Egypt and Jordan from the perspective of the American State Department, especially considering that they are on shaky ground to begin with. Jordan is a literal British invention, a holdover state, waiting there for the greater Israeli project to inevitably take over. Egypt is a little bit different, but ultimately, Egypt is also a client state that could be toppled. A regime that can be toppled. It is a client state that has millions of angry citizens in it that could just at any given moment go, what the fuck are we doing? It has happened before in Egypt.
They also happen to have different interests. And what we have in the United States is a situation where we have this thing called the Israel lobby, which I, of course, have written about with Steve Wald, which goes to great lengths to push the United States to support Israel unconditionally. In other words, no matter what Israel does, we are supposed to support Israel. And the lobby is so effective. It is so powerful. It is so effective that we basically end up supporting Israel unconditionally. What that means, Tucker, is in those cases where Israel's interests are not the same as America's interests, we support Israel. We support Israel's interests, not America's interests, because
over and against America's interests.
Of course, because the interests clash in those specific instances.
Right. Which is, as you noted at the outset, just the nature of like sovereign countries doing business with each other. You're going to agree on some things and disagree on others.
Absolutely.
But can you think of any moment in the last, say, 40 years where there was that clash between non-converging interests, where the United States chose its own interests over Israel's interests?
No. No, I can't think of anything that fits that description. I mean, one could argue that.
I mean, there have been instances where America has told Israel to quit it. Okay. George H.W. Bush, Ronald Reagan with Lebanon, George H.W. Bush with the expansion of settlements, and even Joe Biden with the 2021 incursion, right? Obama with the nuclear deal. That's another one. That's a major one. You're right. I fucking forgot. Okay. There have been plenty of instances where America has said, cut it out, and Israel has cut it out. Now, one could still say that was in the interest of Israel's continuation, and there is truth to that. Like, there were moments where America was like, we are the party that controls Israel. They know better. They know that that is the truth. And therefore, Israel has responded to American demands. Okay? And yes, you're not wrong when you say that's not the U.S. choosing its own interests over Israel's. It's the U.S. protecting Israel from itself. I agree. But the reason why they're not doing that right now when they could have, the reason why they should have dialed back Israel a long time ago for the sake of Israel's continuation, okay? Because under normal circumstances, post-October 7, what should have unfolded, what has happened, what should have unfolded is exactly what had happened in the past, which is Israel goes in, they kill like 10,000, 20,000 people. It's incredibly bloody. And then they piss off more and more people. And you have more attention to Israel's behavior in the Western world and all this stuff where America then steps in and goes, you have to fucking dial it back because you're getting out of control and there's too much enmity. You're becoming a pariah state, right? That is how things have happened in the past. But Trump 1 was a major convergence, I would say, where the Israeli interests and Israeli intelligence had always been profoundly important for American strategic interests in the region, but they had never had their hands on the fucking wheel. Maybe they could just like make some, if we're driving a car, right? America's driving the vehicle. America controls everything, right? Israel's in the fucking shotgun seat, basically telling which routes to take. And America usually listens. America even allows Israel to make them feel like they're driving the wheel every now and then. Or even in certain instances, Israel misbehaves and even kills like, a bunch of like American naval officers in the USS Liberty incident or whatever. But because ultimately it's so important that this allegiance continues for America's strategic interests, as I described before, that they just kind of let that slide, okay? They kind of let that slide. Trump won after Obama's JCPOA and after a lot of fucking anti-Obama stuff that came from Israel turned into a situation where Israel took control over the vehicle completely. Our Middle Eastern policy was entirely directed by Israel after Donald Trump's first term. And Biden, being the ultra-Zionist that he is, an ultra-nationalist pro-Israel figure that he is, allowed that to continue. There was no off-ramp. There was no scaling back on Israel's influence on American foreign policy. Biden straight up let Israel continue its, continue its like incredibly influential position in American foreign policy that like started directing the car as well. And then post October 7, it was over. It was like fully accelerated, right? With the bear hug strategy. Entirely disagree. Israel runs the show. America is Israel's dog. You have a misconception that Trump has any say. No. Israel currently runs the show, but ultimately, if Donald Trump woke up tomorrow and was hit with a fucking woke ray in his mind, he could literally just be like, Israel, stop it. And Israel would say, yes, we're stopping it. They don't want to do it. They can explain exactly why this would be devastating, how this would collapse Israel as a nation state, collapse Zionism as a fascist project, and all of that. But if Donald Trump was like, no, you're not, you're done, it's over, it would be over tomorrow. Okay? Straight up. There is no genocide or no apartheid state without America's weapons. There is no genocide or no apartheid state without America's go-ahead. There is no genocide, no apartheid state without America's political support to Israel in the global stage. America is the hegemonic superpower on the. America is still very much the hegemonic superpower. Like, I'll give you a totally separate example. Cuba, right? Cuba has a trade embargo. Cuba has a trade embargo by the United States of America. And I sometimes see some liberals be like, oh, there is no blockade. There's no trade embargo. You guys are like greatly exaggerating. Other countries are allowed to fucking trade with Cuba. Wrong. That's not correct. America has actively tried to sanction other countries and other companies from, like, you know, Spain immediately comes to mind. They have actively tried to stop trade altogether to Cuba and have been successful in stopping trade altogether to Cuba. Okay? Bad Empanada, agree
There was
with you
a
on
bit
this?
of a discussion on the Twitter platform recently over a tweet by noted Turkish man Hasan Piker. In this tweet, Hasan Piker argued that the US president could end the genocide in Gaza with one phone call. And a lot of really stupid people took issue with this. The tweets in question can be seen here in this post by